Welcome back to Real Estate 101. I'm your host, Joe Terceira, and today we're going to talk about insurance and home inspection stigmatisms. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Allan Spisak of ACISS Home Inspections. Allan, welcome to the show.
Joe, nice to be back here with you again.
All right, Allan. So today you want to talk about the process of obtaining insurance and stigmatisms on property. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Joe, a lot of people don't realize the importance of a home inspection in relation to items that the insurance companies are concerned about. Okay, so another good reason to get the home inspection is so that when we go through the home, we can find these items, and the purchaser will need to get them addressed in order to get insurance. If they don't, they may not be able to get insurance on their home, which could put the whole process in jeopardy.
All right. So what kind of issues do you normally find when you're doing an inspection that could prevent these kinds of headaches?
Well, Joe, in older homes, let's say pre-1970s, one of the big issues we come across is asbestos. Okay?
Right, absolutely.
And that's an item, when you hear that word, people all of a sudden get concerned about it. So there's a lot of areas in the home that can contain asbestos.
All right, so tell me a little bit about asbestos concerns and where it can be found.
Well, asbestos is a concern because it's a carcinogen. It causes health problems over a long period of time. It was used in a lot of building products. It was used in building materials in plaster. It was used in building materials in ceiling tiles. It was used in insulation, a number of products. So maybe I can start off by telling you where we most commonly find it.
Okay.
So when we go into homes and look at the heating system, those are the areas where we can find asbestos most often. So the older homes that have boilers, often the boiler pipes and sometimes the boiler itself has been wrapped with an asbestos product. So when we see that, right away we note it, and then we advise the client that they should be getting some quotations on the removal of that asbestos. And it can get quite expensive. The second area in the heating system that we find it, believe it or not, is around the ductwork. So some of the round ducts, they used to wrap with a paper wrap asbestos. And again, the word asbestos, the highlight comes up, and people should be getting quotes on having that removed around the ductwork. And it looks just like a white paper wrap.
Right.
And unless you had a good qualified home inspector like our guys from ACISS, you really wouldn't notice it.
So Allan, you mentioned insulation. What kind of insulation contains asbestos?
That's a great question, Joe. One of the most common and biggest concerns in regards to asbestos insulation is called vermiculite insulation. Vermiculite insulation is a material that comes from a mine. It's an actual rock that they crush, and they run it through an oven, and it pops like popcorn. And it's very lightweight, it's very cheap. They used it from the early 1900s up to the 1960s, and it was very common. It came from three places. It came from South Africa, came from Quebec, and it came from Libby, Montana. And about 10 years ago, they found out that the vermiculite insulation from Libby, Montana contains asbestos.
Wow.
Yes. So what we have to do when we find that in an attic is we have to advise again the client to take samples, because we don't know for sure if it does contain asbestos.
Right.
So our inspectors are actually trained and qualified to go into the attic, take 3 samples, and send them to the laboratory for the client to determine if it has asbestos. And the reason you want to find that out is not just for the health concerns, Joe, but the average removal and replacement of vermiculite insulation in an attic runs you from $6,000 to $16,000 for an average size house.
Yeah, that's big.
Again, another reason why you need a good, qualified home inspector like our staff from ACISS to do your home inspection.
Let's talk about another thing that's has been a hot topic over the last 20 or 30 years, and continues to be, and we still see it. Knob and tube wiring. Why don't you explain to our viewers a little bit, what exactly that is?
Good question again, Joe. Electrical concerns, knob and tube wiring. If you have knob and tube wiring in a house you're purchasing, you will not be able to get insurance on it. The insurance industry has decided that it's too unsafe. It's too much of a fire hazard, and insurance companies want it removed. It's the type of wiring that ran 2 single strands of wires, one hot and one neutral. And sometimes, Joe, you can't see it. So we have electrical testers when we go through the home. We test as many outlets as we can find. We know the era of construction, mid-1940s, had knob and tube wiring. So when we find outlets that come up open ground, we pop the covers off and we look for that notorious knob and tube wiring.
Right. Are there any other concerns when it comes to aluminum wiring?
Yes, Joe. Aluminum wiring, again, is an insurance concern. It doesn't have to be removed like knob and tube wiring. Aluminum wiring is primarily a concern with the outlets and the switches. What happens is the homeowners don't know that you need to use a special switch or a special outlet that's approved for aluminum wiring. You can use non-approved aluminum devices, switches and outlets, but those devices then have to be pigtailed. Pigtailing is an easy process. You take the black and white copper wires, attach it to the new plug or switch, then you take the black and white copper wires, attach it to the black and white aluminum wires, use a special antioxidant paste, because aluminum and copper are dissimilar metals, they'll corrode each other, and then you use a special connector, a moret made for aluminum. That process is called pigtailing, Joe. So when we have a house with aluminum wiring, we'll go through, we'll check the plugs and switches to see if they're approved for aluminum and or if they've been pigtailed properly. If not, then that needs to be done. On top of that, Joe, the insurance companies are now requesting a separate electrical inspection to be done by the ESA, Electrical Safety Authority. So if you're buying a house with aluminum wiring, you don't have to worry. You just need to have a good home inspector, like a KISS again, go through the home, identify the concerns with the outlets and switches, and then you will need to get the ESA in to do the inspection and give you a certificate that your insurance company will require to get insurance on the home.
So Allan, tell me, what is the concern with galvanized and cast iron plumbing?
Well, Joe, in the older homes, they used to use water supply lines that were galvanized. So what happens is the galvanized pipes actually corrode from the inside, and they get smaller and smaller. And that restricts the water flow through the home. So you can end up having a house where you go up to have a shower, someone flushes the toilet, and you have no water pressure at all. I've been in houses that's happened. So when we go through the home, we look for signs of galvanized plumbing, we check water pressure and flow to make sure it's going to be adequate for the new homeowner. And the cast iron plumbing, again, iron corrodes, so some of the old cast iron pipes can actually develop leaks, and you can get the elbows or the joints leaking in the cast iron plumbing. Insurance companies, again, have put astigmatism on the cast iron and the galvanized plumbing because potential for leaks.
Right.
And insurance companies obviously don't want to pay out for leaks.
Right.
But one more very interesting stigmatism with plumbing is lead water supply piping. So Joe, you've heard the concerns about lead. Well, we try to check the main incoming line on the water supply, check it, scrape it. If it's a soft, silvery pipe, that means it's lead. And people don't want to have lead incoming lines, especially with small children, because the lead in the water can cause developmental problems in young children.
Down the road,
So when we see that, we automatically recommend a full water pipe upgrade to the home.
For today's final question, I want to talk a little bit about something fairly new and innovative, plastic pipe. And I want to ask you, can they pose a problem?
Joe, believe it or not, we have run into problems with the new plastic supply piping. What's come up is two issues. One is with a Plum PEX product that recently I got a letter from a lawyer and said, please advise your clients if they come across this piping, there's a class action lawsuit.
Really?
Really. And how this is identified is it's a plastic piping, it's got brass fittings that have on the brass fitting the letter MB PEX or a capital P PEX, and those brass fittings, the hoses are clamped with stainless steel clamps. If we see that, Joe, we advise the client to contact a lawyer in London, I believe, that's handling the class action Canadian lawsuit. There's a separate class action American lawsuit. And again, from what I've read with this class action lawsuit, some houses, Joe, will have to be totally replumbed.
Wow.
And I believe this, the years that took place, from approximately 1995 to about 2005. So that's not that old.
Not that old at all.
Yes. One more issue that we came across recently when I was putting on a seminar for home inspectors, and we had a plumber come, he let us know about this Kitec piping. Okay, so Kitec is an orange plastic piping that was run through the homes, again, in and around the 90s. Well, Joe, the company's gone out of business, and guess what? You can no longer get parts for the plumbing.
Wow.
And there's no parts that are interchangeable.
So you've got to redo everything.
Well, if you get a leak in your Kitec plastic plumbing, or you want to add on a bathroom, it's not going to be very easy, because the plumbers we've talked to just have no more parts available. Again, another reason why you get a KISS home inspectors out there, Joe, because our guys know the latest and greatest about what's going on in the industry.
Good stuff, Allan. Thanks again for coming on the show. You brought some great information today. If anybody has any more questions, they can get in contact with Allan Spisak at ACISS. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe Terceira, and we'll see you next time.